Greetings to all of you who listen and watch teachings from Uncommon City. I'm Miko Seymour, lead pioneer of this community that we are forming for the south end of St. Petersburg, Florida. Uncommon City is a community of people pursuing the good, beautiful, and true way of Jesus. We have one core prayer, and that is, let heaven come right here in our city. We lift that from the biblical scriptures where Jesus teaches us to pray for his kingdom come right here on earth as it is in heaven. It's our hope that our teachings from the life of Jesus found in the library of the scriptures would be a resource-type tool in your spiritual formation. If you're in our area and find yourself looking for a faith community to call home, we'd love to invite you to come and see if Uncommon City might be just that for you. The easiest open door for you to check us out would be joining us for our Sunday gatherings on Sundays at 5 p.m. at Cohatch St. Pete, located in downtown St. Petersburg. To learn more, to give, or to discover how you can get involved, check out our website at uncommon.city. Thanks so much for tuning in. Much love and grace and peace to you.
So let me take you back to where we were last week. All right, so we were sitting at the well. Jesus had just come in midday, burning sun. You got the burning sun. He's sitting next to the well. He's at the well that Jacob put together near Samaritan town called Sychar. And there's a woman who comes and walks up the road and says, "Oh, you can see me." Maps. All right. So one of the important things is very interesting as I was preparing this week. It's the first time I've ever sat down and really felt like I saw Jesus at this place, and it was the first time I could see him sitting on that well, and it was really him, and he was saying, like, "Let me tell you." And it was like such a beautiful thing, as I was saying, Jesus said, "Let me tell you." And one of the things he said is, or I picked up as I was preparing for it, was this place called Sychar is a very important place. So Sychar is or Shechem is another name for Sychar, literally in the middle of these two mountains, one Mount Gerizim and one Mount Ebal. Now, right over here at Shechem, a number of critical things happened. The first one, when Abraham, this was before Abraham became Abraham, this is Abraham, when he first came in to Canaan, God said to him, "Go walk, do a prayer walk of the land." And he came back here, and this was the first place he built an altar. Okay, the important thing is he built an altar there. Second time, Jacob bought this land, and Jacob came through, built an altar here called El Elo Israel. Mighty is the God of Israel. Jacob is Joseph's father. He sent to go and see his brothers, go and find his brothers. His brothers were shepherds and they had the sheep at Shechem. And he didn't know if he actually find them at Shechem. These brothers actually went up to Mount Dothan, and that's where he found them. But that's where he came through. And of course, in Mount Dothan, we know what happened to Joseph. He went off to Egypt. And what did he say in Egypt? He said, "Take my bones back. For 40 years, carry my bones back. Bury them in Shechem." All right? So seeing Shechem as the central point. Then this important thing, when Moses was leaving, giving his final speech as he was about to die, he said, "When you go back and when you enter the land, you've got to go in. This is the first place you've got to stop. Build an altar there." And build an altar there. In fact, he said, build that altar on Mount Ebal. And by the way, 6 of the tribes stand on this mountain, 6 of the tribes stand on that mountain. The blessings come from these 6 tribes, the curses, so Deuteronomy 29, the blessings and the curses. 6 that came from the blessing side and 6 came from the cursing side. And Moses said, build an altar. And in fact, he said, build an altar at Mount Ebal. What happened when Joshua came in? When Joshua came in to take the land for the first time, where did he go? This is the first place he stopped. And what did he do? He built the altar. He built the altar as a place for worship. Now, these are really critical, in my mind, really critical things. So when we think about the Gospel of John, John is, if you remember there when we talked about the practices in our scripture reading practices, there was a reason why who the author was, he had a reason he was saying to a particular group. And John was a Jew writing to Jews, and so had a background with Jews. So all the time when we're reading John, we should be saying, so why? What's the background? What is John actually saying behind it? What was the story behind this that was so important? So as Clay said last week, Jesus had to pass through Sychar or Shechem. And I wonder sometimes, we always link that to Jesus had to meet the woman, and I think that's an important part. But I wonder also if Jesus was coming here, because this was the same point that he was entering into, that it always, when the Jews came into the land, and when things happened the first time, it seemed like this was a central point that God would take them to as a place of worship. And maybe Jesus was saying something about worship. And that's why it is important he was at Shechem or Sychar right next to it, and the well is right next to it. Okay, let's go back to where we were. So Jesus at the well, Jacob's well, in the town of Sychar. Thank you, ChatGPT. I'll put that together. So Jesus was tired, sitting at the well under the midday sun. The Samaritan woman comes to him to draw water. And of course, the background of the Samaritans, I won't go into it, but that's a story in itself. If you want to go and dig into 2 Kings, it's lovely. So we considered last time Hagar and Ishmael, and the fact that Hagar was given water. She was thirsty and she came and she was given water. And so we used that whole narrative around the well of making sure that there was water that was being given. And so we were encouraged to cross the line. Clay said, cross the line and be just as Jesus has done. So we ended the story with Jesus offering the woman fresh living water that quenches. And she'll never need to thirst again. It'll be a spring of living water that went up to eternal life. To which he responded, hey, that's awesome. Give me some of that. Yeah, give me that, exactly. All right. So before we move on, let's just go through the arc quickly of the woman. So the first step, as she's walking up, I hope he doesn't notice me. Oh, he's a Jew, it's okay. He won't talk to me. Jesus talks to her. So respectfully, leave me alone. I'm a Samaritan, you're a Jew, just leave me alone. Jesus offers. Yeah, exactly. Jesus offers fresh spring source living water. Okay. So you've got nothing to draw the water, and you're going to give me something to drink. Are you greater than our father Jacob? Jesus carries on and offers, now you can have water that's permanently springing out from inside of you. Cool. Give me some of the water. I don't want to have to come back here because I won't get thirsty. Okay, so notice all the time Jesus is moving into the spiritual and she's staying in the physical. All right, so we get to a point now where Jesus is saying, okay, fine, let's start figuring out how do we then move into the next cycle. So we just reminder again that John, the Apostle John, writing to the wider church, to the Roman church, he's rabbinical, he's going to be speaking in Jewish principles. And so the theme of Jesus, the Messiah, the Son of God, is a very, very important part of what John talked about in the gospel. So I wonder whether this particular point is a bit of a changing point and a critical changing point. So let's look at a storyline of three things in the Old Testament, 3 passages in the Old Testament. You want to get into 3 groups: Team Rebecca, Team Rachel, Team Zipporah. So Team Zipporah, grab a Bible quickly and look at those verses. Over there, Team Rachel, Megan in the group, and then Team Zipporah in this one. Just look at those verses quickly, and I want to come back to you. Zipporah, they're Rachel, they're Rebecca. Okay, so grab those verses quickly. So Rebecca, Rachel, Zipporah. Rebecca, Rachel, Zipporah. Right, so Rebecca 24, 1-4 and 10. I was going to put the guy's name, but I decided the girl's name was a better one. All right, so Genesis, then second one, Genesis 29, Megan. Genesis 29, 1-12, Team Rachel. Exodus chapter 15, 2:15, verse 15 to 21. Just read through it quickly, and what is the storyline? What is the storyline? That's what you're looking for. What is the storyline? You picked it up?
Stay away from the others.
All right. All right. I'm looking for the three teams to tell me whether I'm getting this right. How are you doing? All right. So the first step in the story. First step in the story, there's a future bridegroom or surrogate that journeys to the foreign land. Who's that? And Rebecca, who's the male? For Isaac, he's the Isaac's servant, correct? Yeah. Okay. The next group, Rachel. Who's the person who's traveling in Rachel's case? Jacob. Thank you. And Zipporah, who's traveling in? So who's his future bridegroom, the surrogate coming in? Who's the person who's in there? Moses, dead right. Okay. All right. So what we're seeing is we're seeing a future bride, and there he meets a girl. He's described a maiden. Is that the case? Is that what happened? Yes. 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 Okay. So we're seeing that coming through. Someone, the man or the maiden, draws water from the well. Yes? And Moses, I think he pushed the stone away and he helped draw the water. Yeah. Okay. So in this case, of course, in the case of John and Jesus and the Samaritan, the jar's left unused, but we'll get to that later. All right. And then the maiden rushes home with news about the stranger. Is that true? All right. Okay. She's rushing back to say, and the betrothal is arranged, and usually after a prospective groom has been invited to a betrothal meal. Now, Jesus stayed around for 2 days here. So here seems to be, this is a narrative that we've seen in the Old Testament, at least three examples, and there are other examples in the Old Testament of this type of narrative. The future bridegroom arrives, meets a girl, a maiden, someone has water, brings the water, the maiden rushes home and says, I've got news, and there's a marriage. Okay, hold this frame in the back of your head as I read the rest of the story, as we start going into it. Okay, so what does Jesus do? Immediately after he says, here's some water. Go and call your husband and come here. What? Okay. So doesn't that seem weird? I mean, last time Jesus was offering her living water, and she said, that'll be great, physically, from a physical perspective at least. And Jesus' immediate response is sending her to go and call her husband. Why? My reading of this is Jesus is starting to flip the story and saying, okay, let's think about this slightly differently. Let's think about this as another way, that there's maybe a bridegroom, and there's a well, and there's water. Maybe there's something different. So go and get your husband. All right? And the woman's response is, I have no husband. Okay, and this is a 3-word response in Aramaic. 3-word response. I have no husband. What do you think she was saying? How do we interpret that 3-word response? What options do you think we're looking at? She has what? She has no husband? That's good. That's the way it is. That's the way it is. I have no husband. Nothing more to say. I have no husband. Exactly, right? What option? Right. Okay. All right. What else?
He's dead to me, but that's not 3 words.
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
physically,
Yeah.
but she, anyway.
Yeah.
I don't wanna-
So
He doesn't have a covenant. He's dead. to me,
doesn't have a
that's my
covenant, yeah.
response.
there's so if we take a look at it, if you look at it from the woman's perspective, she's come up, she's asked, hope this guy wouldn't talk to her, this guy's talked to her, and now suddenly go and call your husband. In the frame of that place, maybe it is, well, are you available? Okay. So she could have been saying, he's now asking them, I'm available. And if you look at it in the Old Testament context, get your husband, that's the question. That would be the next step in our betrothal step, wouldn't it be, right? So this needs to know, is there availability? So that's one thing it could be. Another thing is, as we said, it's an honest answer, simple honest answer. I don't have a husband. Or this is part of my life that I don't want to expose. Don't come here, don't go in there. Yeah, don't come here. as Megan said, could be divorced, could be widowed, whatever. Or there's no way that I'm bringing my man into the situation, so just keep away, just stay away. I don't want to go there, just evade it. So we've got this evasion, we've got all the way from an honest answer to, oh, okay, you want to know more about me, okay, to just don't go there. But let me just throw out one, and using that first one, go a little bit deeper into it. So maybe she's saying, I'm unattached, hinting at the Samaritan religious need. So she's going, and this again, if you're reading John, we're reading John in multiple levels. So John might be saying, I'm unattached, hinting at Samaritan's religious need. I have no true husband, and the Aramaic there is Bala. Sounds like Baal. Lord is another way of interpreting that. So husband, Bala, Lord. I'm unattached, unclaimed, without a covenant master. And guess what? The true bridegroom, based on John 3:23. Simone, was it you who talked about it, or was it Mika? John, thanks, Mika. Yeah, of course. There's no true, this true bridegroom, or John the Baptist talked about the bridegroom coming. He has arrived and is standing here right in front of you. So maybe that's a way we can interpret it, and just keep that in mind, because that's a nice frame for us to then say, right, so understanding maybe how this woman might be thinking. All right. So Jesus' answer. All right. So you're right in saying I have no husband, for you've had 5 husbands, and the one you have now is not your husband. So what you say is actually true. Okay, so Jesus could have left it there, and I wonder if I would have left it there when she said, I have no husband. It's like, okay, sorry. Jesus wouldn't. Yeah, Jesus wouldn't. He said, no. And he immediately, through the Spirit, he knew exactly where she was. I wonder if I would have exited, but Jesus knew spiritually where she was. And so he wanted to take it to the next level. And for the woman, this is probably the most significant event. And in fact, you'll see Brian, when Brian talks next week, I'm sure he'll highlight this, that this is one of the things that he says, he told me everything. And this was kind of the only thing that Jesus told her, was his 5 husbands. He told me everything. So it is a critical event. So Jesus reveals his divine wisdom and starts nudging the woman forward from the physical into the spiritual thinking. And she goes there. So I can see your prophet. The first time she moved away from the physical into something spiritual now. I see you are a prophet. Okay, but wait. We need to just hold it a little bit. So let's dig a little bit into what's happening as far as this prophet is concerned. So for the Samaritans, they kept to only the Torah, but they had a slightly adjusted version of the Torah. So the Torah, the first 5 books of the Old Testament. So Genesis, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, Numbers. Genesis, Exodus, thank you. Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers. So those are the 5 of that. So Genesis through to Deuteronomy. And those are the ones they kept to. The Jews had the other prophets and the writings and the Psalms at the time. So the Samaritans had actually kept to those, and those that held on to. And for the Samaritans, what they saw as far as the Messiah picture is concerned, they saw references to the prophet within what Moses had said. So, for instance, Moses wrote about the Messiah, and they call it the Taheb, which is not like a king or a conqueror or a ruler or a husband, the type of Messiah that the Jews would be looking for, but a prophet like Moses. So if you look at Deuteronomy 18, it talks about that, about being a restorer, who God's words would be in his mouth, and he will tell you everything that God commanded him. So listen to him. So when she starts saying, you're a prophet, she's referring to someone who's speaking the words of God, and is going to speak in the words of God and do restoration. And so Jesus is saying, right here, I'm showing that I know what God is. I'm teaching you. I'm saying things that you didn't know I knew. So I see you're a prophet as a response. And she was immediately saying at that level, I'm moving from, okay, this is just a Sir or a Jew, but hang on, this is someone who knows and therefore is a prophet. So she's now kind of stepping up the next level and saying, right, I'm not just talking to you as a Jew, but you're a prophet. And in my terms, from a prophet, you're a restorer, and potentially you've got the words of God. So she kind of does the first step. She's not quite sure whether he's the prophet, but he is a prophet. And says, okay, fine. So if you're a prophet, here's one of our big problems. So the Jews and the Samaritans were always at odds with each other. Jerusalem is where the Jews said you're supposed to be worshiping. Up here, or Mount Gerizim, that mountain on the left-hand side, is where the Samaritans said they had to be worshipped. So we've got the situation of essentially these two places of worship. Now this links back to Deuteronomy, that passage I shared earlier, when Moses said, when you come into that city or into that place, make sure you build an altar. Now the Samaritans had actually taken that, and that's one thing that they changed in Deuteronomy. They actually said, because Moses said build on Mount Ebal, they changed it to say, no, built on Mount Gerizim, because that was where the blessing was happening. And they also held the fact that, in fact, Mount Gerizim is where Isaac had just about been offered. And so that whole change, they believed that that's where it happened. The Jews believed it actually happened on Mount Moriah in Jerusalem, where they built the altar. So, yes, please.
So when she says, but you say, is she saying that because she knows that he's Jewish?
Jewish, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So she's
Jewish people, they say that the place where
is Jerusalem.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So and what we have as what happened when they came back. So we know that there was exile, and when the Jews came back from exile from Babylon, Cyrus actually said, go back to Jerusalem and build a temple. And he actually gave them money, and they built a temple. And just a few years later, they came in, they continued to build the temple and build up the whole the walls of Jerusalem. And there was resistance from the locals, the Samaritans, one of which was named by the name of Sanballat. Sanballat was a local leader. And so what had happened, and Nehemiah and Ezra were the two people who actually happened to build the temple and establish the religion at the time. And so Nehemiah had gone back to Babylon, and while he was out there, Sanballat had actually managed to weasel himself into the whole Jerusalem side of things. And he'd actually got the son, in fact, a high priest, to marry his daughter. And so he was now the father-in-law of the high priest in Jerusalem. Nehemiah comes back and says, hang on, high priest, you can't marry a non-Jew. That's not allowed. You're out of here. And so he was thrown out. So Sanballat then went to the Darius, one of the kings in Persia at that time, and said, right, I've been thrown out. I need to build a temple. And so he organized to have a temple built on Mount Gerizim. And so there's the temple was built on Mount Gerizim by the Samaritans, and the high priest that had been thrown out by Nehemiah actually then was the high priest, appointed the high priest of that temple. And so we've got these two temples, one built in Jerusalem, that was funded where the Jews offered sacrifices, and the other one in Mount Gerizim. And these are the two places that she was talking about. So you say it's in Jerusalem, because the Jews believe that is where God had placed them, and God had told them to build a temple. It goes back to Solomon and David, where God actually showed David where to build the temple on Mount Moriah, which is the mountain where they believe that Isaac was nearly offered. And so the whole process then was the Jews are there, the Samaritans are there, and they've got this big conflict. Where should you actually be worshiping? And so this is a big question of the time. Where's the place? So you're a prophet, solve this problem for me. Okay. All right, so back to the story. So what does Jesus then says? So Jesus then, stepping into the revealing himself as the Messiah, steps at the next level. Woman, believe me, the hour is coming believe me, the hour is coming when neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. Heresy. And radical. So not even in Jerusalem, not here, not even in Jerusalem. So we're both off. We're going to worship the Father. No, notice what she asked. She didn't say anything about who.
Yeah.
It was worship. Where? She used to worship. And Jesus said, worship the Father. There's an object of worship. All right. Okay, so what did worship look like in those days? Right, so remember, this is in the New Testament days when Jesus was around. So what did worship look like in Jerusalem, and then also on Mount Gerizim? So firstly, it was in a place. So daily in Jerusalem, there was a lamb sacrifice in the morning. At dawn, they said, at 9 a.m. in the morning, and in the afternoon at 3 p.m. Bread and wine were offered. Incense was offered in the most holy place. Psalms were sung. Priestly blessing was given. The Shema was read morning and evening. They had 3 major festivals: Sukkot, which is Tabernacles, Feast of Tabernacles; Pesach, the Passover; Shavuot, the Pentecost. 3 major times they came to Jerusalem. And everyone came to Jerusalem. The men had to come 3 times a year. And then they added Purim and Hanukkah from Esther, and then also the Maccabean revolt. So they had 5 different times that the Jews would come together into Jerusalem. And then in the same case on Mount Gerizim, they ascended Mount Gerizim 3 times a year for Passover, Shavuot, and Sukkot. So Passover, Pentecost, and Tabernacles. They followed the same type of processes. Lambs were slaughtered. There was sacrificial. It was physical sacrificial that they actually then offered those 3 times a year. And even though their temples, so the temple in Mount Gerizim had actually been taken down or destroyed in a Maccabean revolt around about the 2nd century, but they still went up that mountain, and even today apparently they still go up the mountain on those 3 times. So both the Jews and the Samaritans had that same cycle of lamb sacrifice, animal sacrifice. It was in a place. It was the priesthood mediators, so the priests were there, and the priests were actually being the mediator to God. It was animal sacrifices, it was communal, and it also included synagogues. Both of them had synagogues. It was time linked or time orientated, so specific prayers, specific times of day, and specific festivals. And Jesus said, time is coming, not here, not in Jerusalem, you're going to worship the Father. All right, let's take a look at that second section. So what worship? You worship what you do not know, we worship what we know, for salvation comes from the Jews. But the hour is coming. Let's hop into that one. But the hour is coming and is now here, when true worshippers worship the Father in spirit and truth. For the Father is seeking such people to worship him. God is spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth. That's radical. Think about it. Think about what was happening at the time. Yeah. Okay. That's why I think Jesus said, I need to go to Shechem. I need to go to Sychar. Things are going to change. I'm changing the script. I'm changing the script radically. The new covenant. All right. So think about it. It's not just worship, it's worship of the Father. It's not just physical worship with animal sacrifices and incense, it's in the Spirit. It's not just ritualistic worship. It must be true worship by worshipers, the kind that the Father seeks. So the temple is no longer physical, but spiritual, and centered on Jesus. After all, he said, destroy this temple, in 3 days I'll raise it up. Worship is no longer focused on priest-intermediated relationship of a fearful God, but worship of the Father, your Father and my Father, Jesus said when he came back after the resurrection. Worship requires truth and being truthful, not falsehood. So God expecting this whole focus on how do we actually think about it from the truth and the way to do things the right way. And the interesting thing I found there as well, very interesting. So Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. So if you look at it, God is spirit, so the Father is spirit. So Father, Spirit, Holy Spirit, and truth, Jesus. So here's worship in the Trinity, kind of in that one statement. So another layer, if you wish. Okay. And then Jesus said, okay, so she says, right, okay, this is radical. But I know that if the Messiah, so if you're now thinking the Messiah, I know that the Messiah is coming, the one who's called the Christ. And when he's coming, he will tell us all things. Again, remember what I said about the Samaritan's vision of the Messiah? Is this the person who's going to reveal, is going to be telling the truth. And so that's what they're looking for. So that's what the woman was looking for. So you'll teach us all truth. So if you're the Messiah, so she's now stepping up. You're a prophet. You're the prophet, or you perhaps the Messiah. So I know when the Messiah comes, who's called the Christ, he'll tell us everything. Jesus' response was unambiguous. I am the one. Jesus' response, I who you speak to am he. If you look at the Greek, it is the same type of wording that is used when God sent Moses back to Pharaoh. I am who I am. It's the same. So if you look at the way the Greek is translated, it's that same I am. So ego eimi. Sorry? I am that I am. I am that I am. And if you look at the Septuagint, which is the Greek Old Testament translation, it's essentially ego eimi hono, which is I am the one who is, or I am the being. So I am, that's that same phraseology it's used. So Jesus was absolutely unambiguous. What are you looking at? Here's the Messiah. All right, so we've gone through this whole cycle. Now the woman then, and I won't take away your focus, but essentially she then rushes back to town and says, "Come, see, could this be the Messiah?" Brian will take it the next week. Okay, so let's go back to tracing the arc the woman went through. Right at the beginning, I hope he doesn't notice me. Jesus asks for water. She says respectfully, "Just leave me alone." Jesus offers her fresh water, spring-sourced living water. She says, "Hi, but you have nothing to draw the water. How are you going to get this? Are you greater than our father Jacob?" And Jesus offers a permanent thirst removal. He says, "Cool, give me that water." Jesus said, "Go call your husband." You're getting a little too personal. I have no husband. Jesus said, "You're truthful. You have had 5 husbands. Wait, you must be a prophet. Let me test that. Help me understand." There's a new focus, a new form of worship, Jesus says. Could this be the Messiah? I am. I believe. And she runs. It's the arc that she's taken. All right. What about you? What about me? Let me tell you a little bit about my arc of that journey. I think I talked about it a little bit last time, was that, as a young person, I was Anglican. I used to go to church every Sunday. My focus was worship, the way of worship. And there was this interesting, it's not very good. I grabbed that picture, sorry about the quality, but there's this interesting red light in the church, in the sanctuary in the church. And I noticed sometimes the red light was glowing and sometimes the red light wasn't glowing. And of course, being inquisitive, I asked the minister, "What does it mean? Why is it red light?" And the red light glowed when the presence of God was there. Okay, when they're locked away. So in the Anglican Church, there's a belief that there's essentially the body and blood of Christ become like the body and blood of Christ. It's not quite as far as the Catholics in terms of it becomes the real body and blood of Christ, but it becomes a representation, a very tight representation. You must therefore treat it as such. And so there was Christ locked away in there, but the fact that it was there. So for me, it was when that light was there, that's where Jesus was. And I wanted to honor Jesus. I wanted to worship him. I was a choir boy. I was a server. I did everything I could to make sure the worship was good. And then Jesus said, through a friend, "Do you know what it means to be a Christian? You go to church and you do all the things you should be doing. You've got to accept Jesus. He came and died for you." Suddenly it wasn't just me worshiping, it was who am I worshiping and why am I worshiping? And that's the arc. I moved from, I'm not just worshiping, I'm not just being in the choir and singing, I'm ministering the elements. I'm worshiping God, and I knew the element, I knew the substance, the who. And then over the years, more and more, just the realization of who this Messiah is, the restorer, the husband, the beauty of everything that Jesus becomes as the Messiah, as the restorer, as the husband. We look at it in this case in terms of the Samaritan woman. And so really moving through that whole cycle, that same arc, and I'm sure you followed exactly the same arc of, at some point in the life, I believed and found my Messiah, my anointed one, Christ Jesus. So back to the betrothal narrative. So the woman answered, "I have no husband." Maybe she was saying, "I have no true husband, Bala or Lord. I'm unattached, unclaimed, without a covenant master. But the true Messiah, the bridegroom, has arrived, and he's here right in front of you." And I love this verse. It's a verse in Hosea where God has just saying to Israel, I just love you so much. I don't want you to call me my master. And there's that Bala. I don't want you to call me my master anymore. I want to call me my husband. And it goes on, Hosea 2 goes on, says, and I, God, will betroth you to me forever. I'll betroth you to my righteousness and in justice, to me in righteousness and in justice, in steadfast love and in mercy. I'll betroth you to me in faithfulness, and you shall know the Lord. I want to be called husband, not Lord, not master. I want to be your husband. And that to me is what the woman found. And I really just pray that our Messiah bridegroom will open up that direct access to the Father, so we can be the true worshippers of the Father. I pray that just like a Samaritan woman did, that we would come to know Jesus as that Messiah, that bridegroom, that husband. And as we do, we become the true worshippers of our Father, the ones the Father looks for.
Amen.
So who is this Jesus? Our amazing Messianic bridegroom who opened up direct access to the Father so we could be the true worshippers, the one the Father seeks. No longer Lord, my master, my husband.